Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Oh man, that puts a smile on my face. That's the new theme of the DRF Players podcast, appropriated from Willie Nile and his brilliant self-titled first album from back in the day. Song is called Dear Lord, and that voice you heard was the voice of the Kentucky Derby, Travis Stone, our good pal, lending his golden throat to the intro. Actually, producer Craig, I didn't really prepare you for this, so I'm not sure if we can do it or not, but if it's cool, let's play that again. I want to hear it again.
Lord, give me money. Come on, Lord, give me money.
This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you, not in the Brooklyn bunker, but in the Brooklyn salon, upstairs. It's too cold down there, man. Might be 50 degrees outside New York, but it's still nowhere that I want to be down in the bunker. We'll get a space heater down there, clean it up soon. This is show 300, as promised. Some special stuff happening on show 300, starting there right at the top with the new theme song from Willie Nile, voiceover provided by Travis Stone. This is the Friday, the 12th of January, 2018 edition. Peter Thomas Fornatel back with you alongside Jonathan Kinchin, not in the planet Texas today, but coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, America. How are you, JK?
Yeah, I hate to correct you, Pete. I am still in the planet Texas. I'm in the planet Euless, Texas, where the leaderboards for NHC stuff used to always say, like, Euless, Texas, and no one ever knew who that was. That's where I grew up. I'm at my dad's house. I'm in my old room looking at a hole that I once punched in the wall from
What photo was that?
My adolescence, yeah. It wasn't, see, back then it wasn't racing photos. It was, what do you mean I have to be home at 11 o'clock photos? It was losing those photos that caused that. But no, I'm at my dad's house in Dallas. I will be flying to Lexington later this afternoon, weather permitted. They're having some storm issues there, but I think I'll be able to slide in just in time. So looking forward to today's 300th show, and glad to be a part of it, and how awesome it was for our friend Travis to help us out with that. Not every day you get the voice of the Kentucky Derby to do anything for free, so I'm sure we'll have to give him a beer.
Who said anything about free, JK? I didn't tell you about the deal we struck, but we could deal with that off air. But it was great to have Travis participating there, and Willie Nile, old family friend, great underrated singer-songwriter, rock and roller. Check him out, willienile.com, and you can also check out his body of work on YouTube. A lot of great stuff in there. That one probably has the most application for horse players. Again, the number is called Dear Lord, and we're happy to have it. Now, before we move on, I did not realize, a little bird told me you were going to be in Lex, so I apologize for getting that wrong. But
I'm going. I just haven't gotten there yet.
I want to pause for a minute on the hole in the wall. This is Dad didn't like the lyrics on one of your hip hop records and hit it on you or something. Like, what are we talking about here for real?
I don't know. It was probably just some stupid, like, look, I don't know about all men, but I think a lot of men went through this stage in life where, like, you thought it was like the best way to let out your frustration was to, like, hit, punch, or kick something. I learned the hard way as, like, a 20-year-old man. I went to kick a cardboard box that I thought was empty, and it was full, and I broke my big toe, and it was one of the worst pains I've ever had in my life. That was the last time I took out any frustration physically. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I don't know, just some stupid teenage deal, or I was probably mad because my dad wouldn't let me go out or something.
It happens, and I still I've punched a wall within the last year. I think you know the story, JK. I don't know if I've ever told it on here. There are places in the world, America not being one of them, but there are places in the world where it's legal to bet on the Oscars. And last year for the Oscars, I had a feeling, I knew about the whole Oscars so white thing, et cetera, et cetera. I was prepared for there to be a lot of people of color winning awards on the night, and well-deserved, not just because of the movement. But when it came to Best Picture, I was pretty sure that a film that celebrated Hollywood to the degree that La La Land would, I didn't think the voters would be able to help themselves. And I agree in many ways, artistically speaking, Moonlight, the superior picture, et cetera, et cetera. But I thought when push came to shove that La La Land was going to be an excellent bet to win Best Picture over, the smaller film, arguably better, definitely better film, but smaller film with, 50 lines of dialogue and the whole thing. I didn't think they'd be able to resist the, white people dressed up like candy cones and singing picture. So I had that bet. Of course, they announced La La Land. I mean, I'm rehashing ancient history here, but they announced La La Land as the winner. I'm counting my money, successful Oscar betting, et cetera, et cetera. And then the way that it went down, with it having been the incorrect award and that money checking with a friend in the UK and the money having disappeared from the account, the whole thing made me, even though it was probably in life is the correct result, it did make me angry enough that I hit a wall. So it happens to me to this day. I know Paul Matisse proudly, I don't know about proudly, but admittedly has a hole in the wall of his office that I assume he's fixed by now, but it was there for a long time. It's something that horse players will do to deal with their frustrations from time to time.
And in all honesty, the best part about it is that I'm not 100% sure. It's been 15 years. I'm not 100% sure my dad knows that the hole is there because I have it covered with a montage picture, one of those like old school pictures that has like 8-9 pictures of all of my baby pictures in it. So there's I'll actually tweet the picture that is actually there. It's like, so I don't even know if he knows it's there. It's just a bunch of pictures of me being an adorable young person. So we'll see.
I'm sure you were very cute. Let's move on from this silliness to some other silliness. I wanted to talk, just because it is the 300th episode, brief history of the DRF Players podcast. That's the note on my little rundown for this week. And I just wanted to talk to people. I'm surprised we got to show 300 here, and the show has morphed and changed. And I want to give credit where credit is due. This show exists because of our friend TV's Matt Bernier. He was TV's Matt Bernier even then at the beginning of the show when it began back in 2014. He started at DRF. He and I started at DRF right around the same time. I remember the first time I had the pleasure of working with Matt, I was doing a signing for the winning contest player. It was Preakness Day, Chrome's Preakness, out at, Belmont would have been open then. It was out at Belmont. And Naira booked the signing, and I remember talking to Mandy Minger, who can we get to come do this signing with me? And Matt's name just like popped right into my head as somebody who'd be amazing, somebody I was looking forward to working with. I had seen him at that point on TV. I believe Horse Players had already been on at that point, but I definitely knew him from interviewing him for the winning contest player. I wanted to have a younger voice in there. At that time, I think it's since changed, but at that time he was, well, certainly among the youngest players ever to qualify for the NHC. I knew he was in conversations with DRF. We put that together. We had a good chemistry. It was fun. And when Matt started full-time at DRF, we got through that summer, him flying all over the place to do TV, as I recall. Not sure if any of these facts are correct, by the way, but, it's the way I remember it, so it's emotionally true. That fall, he had the idea of, hey, let's do a podcast. We got the show started. We brought in our third host, who was sort of there for, like, you go back and listen to the first show, he's sort of like there in the background, Mike Hogan, who was also hired at the same time. And then Mike, in this little spiel, wanted to give credit to Matt for getting the show started, wanted to give credit for Mike for keeping the show going during a very, I don't want to say dark time for the show, that's hyperbolic, but there was a time for that the show was in a little bit of trouble in late 15, because I was over in the UK, and I was still participating, but my head wasn't really in handicapping winter USA races post Breeders' Cup in 2015. Matt was doing his own thing, getting ready to launch the Matt Bernier Show, which normally follows this program. It will not today, as Matt, I believe, is on vacation down in Tampa Bay, going to Tampa Bay Downs this weekend. Hello, Matt, if you're listening. And during that time, it was really Mike who kept the torch burning, putting together good crews of people, including myself, to do shows and keep it rocking and rolling. And then the guy who gets credit for breathing new life into the show come early 16, that would be you, Mr. Kinchin. Did you, when we first asked you to, hey, come do a show or two with us, let's see how it goes, did you envision yourself being a fixture on this show for the last couple of years?
No, not at all. I remember the first time you guys asked me to be on as a guest, I was like super excited. It was like one of my first kind of forays into like doing the fun, media stuff that I've been lucky to do over the last few years. And so I remember where I was at when I did my first. I think the first time I was on, I was just a guest talking about something.
Yeah, weren't you like in some hotel lobby and like the waiter kept coming by or something? Wasn't there some funny story like that?
I remember the first time I was on, but I think it was more of just like an interview about something. I don't know if it was about after the NHC or whatever, but the first time I was on, it was just for like 15 minutes. The first time I was on for a full episode, I believe I was in like our old office in like an apartment complex that we had that like, it was just like this unit we used as an office. I think that was in the kitchen, if I can recall. But no, I was, to answer your question, I was really excited and honored to be asked to be on, and it's been a ton of fun. And I did not envision being on the last 100 episodes, at least, I would say, not counting the one that I missed because of my brother's concert. But
yeah, it was your brother's fault. Yeah,
about 100.
We should go back and check, but I think that sounds right. But I do remember early on, I think before you were an official co-host, I might have even been in the video days, the very brief video days. And I'll tell that's one of my favorite stories. I'll tell, but I'll get back to that in a second. But I do remember like the waiter coming over and another mimosa, Mr. Kinchin. You don't recall that?
Well, I tell you what, it sounds you're starting to speak my language. When someone tells you a story of something that you did, but you don't really remember it, but exactly what they're saying sounds like something you would do. That sounds exactly like some situation that I would find myself in. So I'll take your word for it.
There was a brief video era for the DRF Players podcast. It ended up just like the free-flowing nature of the show and what I like about the show. It was like kind of a fun, different kind of show. It was like a lot of guests and different, it wasn't nearly as polished or as good as Out of the Gate, the show that currently follows this, but it was like, it was just a much more like regimented version of the show. And that part was cool, but it was just funny. There was one of the folks who was, I don't want to name names and he's no longer with the company, but there was a guy who came in who sort of like spearheaded the idea of doing that in video. And it was like, I had a conversation with him once. I believe it was through Mr. Hogan, but it was just funny. It's like something you hear in Hollywood. The message was basically this, actually, no, it was with him directly, and here's how I remember. Because I remember him saying to me, PFT. He got the initials wrong. I remember that. PFT, to show you how big of a listener of the show he was. PFT, I love the show. First thing I want to do is change the name, and then I want to get a different host. So you can imagine how well that went over with me. But anyway, I kept the hosting gig. We kept the name of the show, and here we are. We've trucked our way through in about 40 minutes. It'll be 300 episodes, and I always thank everybody at the end. I'll take a minute here at the beginning to give a little bit of extra thanks. The reason the show works is because of you, the listeners, and we appreciate all the questions that come in via Twitter or the podcast at drf.com, but mostly we appreciate the time it takes to let us spend these hours with you during the week, whether it's through earbuds, through the car stereo, or blasting your iPod through the home stereo. However it is you listen to your podcast, I do believe there's one listener in Roanoke, Virginia, who still actually downloads the show, JK, to the old school iPod and plays it through his stereo at home. And I appreciate him and you and all the listeners for the support over the years. We had a couple of questions come in. That's one of the things we do here on this show is answer questions. I had an answer to this that I responded directly, but wanted to get your take on it. I'm guessing it's going to be the same as mine. Somebody looking for a place to sit at Santa Anita where he can access his laptop and the internet. he offered the caveat that his betting minimums aren't up to Eddie Logan's sweet standards, so he asked where he should go instead.
I would say front runner's always good.
That was my suggestion.
Front runner's good. It's the kind of the indoor dining with the kind of the floor to ceiling glass that runs from about the wire to the 16th pole, maybe a little bit past the 16th pole. So that one's always good. Great view of the track, great view of the horses, coming across the dirt on the downhill. All of those things are great. If you're looking for more of an outdoor air situation, the turf terrace works as well. You're a little bit past the wire in that situation, but you are still elevated enough where you can see kind of what's going on. But if you're going to have your computer and all of that stuff and you want to be able to plug it in and leave it, I would do the front runner.
Give a call. That was my suggestion as well. Get sorted out in the front runner. Really fun scene up there. I like that Macho Mary that they have. They sort of infuse the vodka with various vegetables, and it's good. Needs a little extra heat for my taste, but it's a good drink. It's proper. And
there's a guy up there that's great. I don't know his name, and I feel bad for this, but it's a guy. And forgive me for the stereotype. I believe he's like from some part of the world that feels like kind of Russian. I don't know. It's just like he's a kind of Eastern European accent type of situation, but he works at the bar upstairs in the front runner, and he's really nice. He loves talking about racing, and then he is also a regular in the dungeon when he gets off of work, and so I respect him a little bit more for that. I can't remember his name, but he's a really nice guy.
Next time through, you're going to find his name. We're going to give him a shout out, and we'll have him on DRF Players Podcast After Dark that we'll do down in the dungeon that will air only once on Periscope. No archive for DRF Players Podcast After Dark, as we've learned, is the way to go on that front. But yeah, the bar is actually really cool. I almost suggested sitting at the bar. I would assume during a busy day, computers and bars don't really mix. Bar tops. On a mellow day, on a Thursday afternoon, you might be able to get away with that. But what I would probably say is one thing I like to do at the track, just in general. We've never really talked about this, but I think it's good advice. I like to divide up my day. You spend half the day at Saratoga, for example. Maybe go to one of the dining areas for lunch, and then go visit your friends in the backyard for a couple of races, and then, of course, as always, you end up at the paddock bar. Plenty of days, of course, we just post up at the paddock bar and don't leave. But it's fun to move around. So maybe the move is start the day like when you're in your more serious gambling mode, get your table in the front runner, sit there, and then end of the day, pop that laptop in its carrying case and go up to that bar and hang out. I think you pretty much can't help but meet some interesting horse players. It's this pretty long bar, and it's good vibes. I've had a lot of good times hanging out up there, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's there's a lot of good spots at Santa Anita. So the apron is cool too, like there.
I don't know if I've ever in my life watched a race on the apron at Santa Anita, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, that's cool. The paddock.
What do you like about it?
It's just like it's flat and open, so it's not like that weird. And it's kind of slanted, so even if you're standing back, you can still see.
Actually, I did. One year they did like a beer festival out there. That was actually super fun. Roxy Roxborough was around, and I remember hanging out with him and Walt and some of their buddies and going down. And you're right. It's just, the great thing about, I love the apron for like a race or two, just because like the visceral excitement of having those horses run by you when you can really like feel the ground shake as they go by. It's exciting.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the paddock is great there too, because when they come in, not the receiving barn, but when they come in to their saddling enclosures, it's covered, and it's a really good view at them before they actually come into the walking ring. So
yeah, and then of course don't sleep on Quigley's Corner. I mean, that's an amazing. It's no accident that Tom Quigley picks that area right when the horses are walking out, because you get what I like about that is you get two views. So let's describe where that is. They come out, they do the walking ring, they walk out of the walking ring, and then they make a left essentially onto the track. Quigley's Corner is right before they make that left onto the track. So you get a chance to see them. You sort of see the side view in the walking ring when they're coming around, and then they walk right in front of you. You've got that tree for shade. There's a bench there. It's great. Tom, of course, is the best. Folks can follow him at Quigley's_corner on Twitter?
I believe so. I believe that's what it is. But
Should
I
be
can
able to
look
find
just
him.
to double check.
Yeah, take a look and double check. I don't want to put people wrong,
Yes,
away
it's
here.
Quigley's_corner.
He, of course, tweets his paddock picks and other insights on California racing.
Don't judge him by his profile picture either. It's a little bit 1996. However, I don't know if TQ listens to the show, but if you see TQ, someone can relay this to him. I'm pretty good on Photoshop, and one day, for my love for TQ, I created a version of that is a little bit more 2015, 16, and I sent it to him, and it's the exact same thing. There's no one in the world would say that what he has is better than what I sent him. No one. There's not a human that lives that says, "Oh, I like what he has better," and he hasn't put it up yet. So
that's amazing. Is it possible he doesn't know how to change it?
I don't know. I've seen him work that remote on the iPad and the Eddie Logan suite pretty efficiently. So I think. Oh no, I actually do think the TQ's just busy and he probably just forgot. And
I would tell the girl downstairs. Maybe she could get it done.
Oh, she'll get you. You need something sorted out with TQ. You talk to her. She'll sort it out for you.
TQ. You say the picture is very 1996 in a way. So is TQ. He's kind of an old school guy and a legend from the early days of contests. Winner of the old Turf Viver contest at Gulfstream. That was a cool format. Did you ever learn about that? Do you know what I'm talking about even?
I've heard, but tell me the story again.
So it was very interesting. The contest started off like a regular contest and like it may be a 2-day deal. And day 1 determined seeding. And then in day 2, they somehow had some sort of cool like head-to-head format where, like a Sweet 16 situation where the field winnowed down to where there were just 2 players. And I don't know exactly how they did it. It's probably worth looking at because it seems like it's kind of a fun thing to maybe try to revive, maybe in an online format somehow. But yeah, TQ won it one year. And I believe in the finals, he took down his business partner, one of the godfathers of the NHC and NHC qualifier, my friend, the late great Jeff Sotman. I know they squared off at some point during Turf Viver, but it was fun. But TQ's got legitimate credentials, qualified for plays in a lot of the big dances, qualified for the NHC a bunch of times, won some real money playing tournaments. Of course, these days he's more on the other side of the counter, along with Nate Newby. One of the reasons why Santa Anita do such a good job running contests is because folks who play in contests and understand contest players, Nate and TQ at the helm. Well, I wasn't planning on a love letter to Santa Anita in this 300th episode of the DRF Players podcast, but it is appropriate. I just realized we have our special guest coming up later in this hour, JK. We've got to boogie a little bit if we want to talk through these races and get the show in anything remotely on time. I did have one other quick question I wanted to address. I was asked about, there was a little conversation on Twitter in the TRC, is that what it's called? Not usually in the business of promoting other websites' work, but there was this really cool profile of the handicapping author Mark Kramer earlier this week. And Frank Scattoni chimed in about the story from when he and I went racing. Susan was there. His then girlfriend, Jen Thornton, was there. This was in 2006, and we went to the Ark. And degenerates that we were, we had a chance to, be good boyfriend and husband, respectively, and spend every day taking our significant others around Paris during the week. But we sort of came up with a compromise. We made plans with the significant others at night, but during the day, we went to racetracks. And so we got a chance to check out, 4 or 5 of the Parisian tracks, and it was amazing. And Frank was a rock star. From way back in the 1990s, spent 6 months dating a woman who spoke fluent French. So I had a little bit of French, but not much. He was pretty good. I don't think he took some online course or something and got, you wouldn't say fluent, but conversant in French to lead us around. But the real reason we were able to have such success going to all of those tracks was I had met Mark Kramer at one of the DRF Degenerate Expos we used to do out in Las Vegas, and just the kind of guy you hear him speak once, and just such a creative handicapping mind and such a horse player's horse player. And I knew he was living in Paris, and he agreed to meet us at one of the little they're not really cafes, they're like tobacco store / cafe deal where they also have their off-track betting. And he met us one morning and gave us like a little view of the Paris turf, basically the closest thing they have to a racing form equivalent. Only, man, it was at the time when I first picked it up, completely inscrutable. Not only in French, but just their way of doing the form was completely different. And Mark took 2 hours out of his day and walked us through how to read through that form, taught us some words to look for, French words to look for that might give us a clue into how to handicap a race. I remember for some reason it still sticks in my head. La Chanture, I believe it was, meant like a horse that was a clue of a horse that might be a speed horse. And anyway, armed with a little bit of knowledge and just basically doing paddock work and tote board reading, we went to the 4 or 5 different Parisian tracks throughout the course of the week, and ended up doing okay. Not betting anything resembling real money, but made a few dollars. And I just always thought that was amazing, and it's something I've tried to live up to. That Kramer, established in the field, written wonderful handicapping books, one in particular about thoroughbred form cycles. Can't remember the exact title. It'll be in that TRC article. Another book called Kinky Handicapping. These books, these out-of-the-box ways of looking at racing that I think are still really relevant to this day. And I recommend folks check out Kramer's work. I'd love to get in touch with him sometime. We're friends on Facebook. I don't think he really uses the Messenger, unfortunately. I sent him a note once and didn't hear back, but try to get in touch with Mark and have him as a guest on the show at some point. But somebody had asked about how that all went down, and it's something I've tried to live up to, that the idea that people reach out to you, you have some specialized knowledge, you can help them out. Take the time to do it, because it's just good. And I know you're a believer in this too, JK, of just sort of paying things forward and putting that good energy out in the world, not only because it is much more likely to come back to you and find you in a future situation, but just because it's the right thing to do in this weird little fraternity of horse players that we're all in.
Yeah, no, I mean, I try to make it a point to, not like trust me, I'm not putting it on some big scale of responding like a fan letter or whatever. But if someone takes the time to ask a question on Twitter or email, I try to respond. I don't understand, like, you're not that busy, right? Like, you're not that busy that you don't have time to answer someone's simple question or, whatever. And usually what I'll do is, if I get too busy, is like, and I don't care, I'm not one of those old dudes who is so uncomfortable by someone having my phone number. I'll just tell them yo, text me sometime or call me. I'm going to be driving for an hour tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Call me. And then that way I don't really have to take that much time to respond via email. I can just chop it up with them on the phone. So, I think it's great when someone is willing to take the time to speak with you. And I remember when I was first getting started in this, some of the people that did take the time to speak with me, and it was you, for instance. You're the
right,
author.
That's how I met you.
You're the author of a book that I had just read, and the first time I talked to you, talked to me on the phone for almost an hour. And there's a lot of people that were that way. That talk. I used to listen to a podcast that a guy named Derek Simon used to do, and I sent him a Facebook message, and he responded to me, and little stuff like that, and I think goes a long way. And Steve Bick, before we became friendly, he like we are now, he came to dinner at my first NHC. He met Nick and I out for dinner, which I thought was, obviously he had a relationship with Nick, but I think those things are all cool. It encourages people to get involved, and it makes them feel like they're in a fun place where they can, share their admirations for our sport.
And we say this not to reflect glory upon ourselves because we're so wonderful, but to give credit to people. In my case, Mark Kramer, who helped us out early on, and to encourage you fans to do the same. Even if you're a novice fan, that ability to take somebody to the racetrack and try to show them what this culture is all about. We encourage you to do that, and we're here to help where possible. As you've already heard on this show, love to answer questions. Hit us up on Twitter. He's at UT Big Hair. I'm at Looms Boldly. You can also use that podcast email, podcast@drf.com, and we can hopefully get you sorted out. Let's do something, JK, we haven't done on this show since early December. Let's handicap a couple races. Then we've got our very special guest coming up later in the hour, a mystery guest. But let's talk about some racing. I looked at a few races this weekend. We kind of didn't talk before the show about what we're going to look at. Did you have a chance to look at the Jerome at all at Aqueduct, assuming they're back up and running here by Saturday?
I glanced. I have looked at it a little bit, but the other thing about it is what's great about this situation we've talked about before is when you take and you have good trip notes, you can sometimes you can handicap at a quicker pace than others. So I did glance at the Jerome. I did, and I don't know if we talked about this, but I did a pick 3 at Fairgrounds where I believe I singled a horse that you probably picked. So I know we'll be able to chat about that.
Cool. Well, I'll give my thoughts on the Jerome really quick.
Okay.
I looked at this race wanting with every fiber of my being to bet against Forensifier just because as good of a run as the Champagne was at the same course and distance, I thought, there was a world in which maybe that was a little bit flattered. But the more I looked, I felt like there was an obvious excuse last time in the Juvenile. This was a horse that saw plenty of time down inside. Even the races from last summer, which he should have improved from at this point, put him fast enough to win this race, and I just couldn't make a case for anybody else. So I was hoping you maybe had something clever. Yeah. I won't give it away because I want people to watch out of the gate. I was flattered to be asked by Dan Illman to co-host with him this week, and he had a little bit of a clever idea in here. Did you have anything to do other than take the chalk and move on?
Yeah, this is one of those situations where I don't, the favorite looks to be the most likely winner. But with that said, I like 7 Trumpets in here. That horse, or maybe not in here. I like 7 Trumpets. I know that Dale has always thought very highly of this horse. I know that our friend John Nichols, who spends a lot of time at Churchill Downs, has always expressed to me that 7 Trumpets was one of Dale's best. Obviously, he has Dak Attack, and then the horse that I'm obviously going to go blank on now that ran really well, the one that should have was involved in that DQ at Saratoga.
Oh, Free Billy, something like that.
Free Drop Billy. I don't. It's funny. That's what I relate is that, but I forgot that he won a Grade 1 at Keeneland as well. And so I know 7 Trumpets has always been well thought of. A horse like 7 Trumpets, if he were to be ignored at the tote board, would be one that I could get interested in. But the race, like you said, doesn't really create a lot of opportunities for interesting angles. And I will say this as well. I never want to discourage people from handling and placing wagers, but I would be very cautious at Aqueduct over the next few days. Because when a racetrack gets canceled, it's getting canceled because there's problems with the racetrack.
That's an excellent point.
And if and when bias is or not going to happen, I would think it would happen coming in or going out of a situation in which the racetrack is a problem, right? So I would tread lightly here this weekend, or I would just pay really good attention to what's going on earlier in the day and really be able to find some opportunities where if the rail is good, you can find a horse like Colton, Mississippi, or that was 6-1, who doesn't have the strongest of figures for Todd, but obviously will be well meant for Todd. Maybe that horse can make a little sense if the rail happens to be good, or vice versa. So I would tread lightly at Aqueduct until we find out what's going on with the racetrack.
Do me a favor. Are they running today? I mean, they had that problem yesterday. Folks were like, well, why did they cancel? They canceled because they lost the track.
Yeah, I saw it. I'll look right now.
There's been a bunch more rain is what I was going to say. So, like, I don't know what opportunity they really probably had to make it right between yesterday and today. So I'm a little nervous about today.
Racing is on for Friday. And here's a good follow if you don't follow this person, Pete. And I don't know if you know this wise guy tip or not. Mark Hennig, the trainer at Hennig Racing, is like the best tweeter of communicating what's happening. He usually tweets. He's usually the first one that tweets if they're on or off the turf, because I guess they announce it on the backside before they tweet it. Naira does. They announce it on the backside, and he's the first one that tweets it. So I always check for his feed when I'm looking for information about Naira. They are running today, though.
I always root for Mark. Good guy. I've had the pleasure of socializing with him on a number of occasions. Always enjoy it. And you're absolutely right, JK. He is a terrific Twitter follow. All right, let's move on to the fairgrounds. Where did your pick 3 start? I looked at 2 races, the Silver Bullet Day, where I have a strong opinion, and the Lecomte, where I have an opinion that's less strong.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I did a pick 3 starting in race 7. Which is the Silver Bullet Day. People that listen to this show know how against we were against Wonder Godot last time. I don't know if we have time for this conversation. I am a little bit puzzled why they were even considering running her in the Lecomte.
I don't really know either. It's odd. It's odd that she was cross-centered. It sounds like she's going to go here.
Right.
Maybe it just had to do with, well, let's see who should. Just like a why. Maybe it was a why not. You know, maybe.
Oh, okay. It's just the Demoiselles are grade 2, right? So winning a grade 3 in the Lecomte doesn't really do anything for you, as from a breeding perspective. It's the same distance, and you're going to be odds on in this race. You're going to be 6-1 in the other one, and it's for like practically the same purse, $50,000 difference. Which you only get 60% of that if you win. Okay, sorry. Anyway,
it made no sense. Unless they thought like Heavenly Love was doing so well, something weird like splitting them up or anyway, it didn't make a ton of sense, but it doesn't hurt them at all. And it sounds like they're going to go in the right race. So we probably said enough about that.
Right. I love Heavenly Love here. Our friend we plugged on the show before, Sean Borman was on Heavenly Love going into the Alcibiade. See, you messed me up.
I got you doing it.
Because we make fun of you so much that now I can't even pronounce it the right way. Gosh, I really.
Alcibiades. I'll say
Alcibiades.
it. Alcibiades. Yeah. I'll never make that mistake again.
Yeah, he liked her going into that spot. Liked her going into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly. And like a good handicapper and good horse player, didn't let his opinion marry him to the horse. And when he realized that the rail wasn't where he wanted to be, she drew down in there last time. He got off of her a little bit. Now she's back in this spot, and I think she'll turn the tables. She's drawn outside of Wonder Godot, should be able to get a comfortable trip. The other thing about it is it's kind of that the other Cassie situation is think enough about the horse to enter with Wonder Godot being in this spot as well. So I'm a big fan of that filly in this spot, and I expect her to run well. I singled her in my pick 3 that starts here.
The phones are ringing off the hook at the Brooklyn Salon. I kind of forgot I had these ground lines up here. Don't have to deal with that as much downstairs. Yeah, I have nothing to add. Actually, I do have something to add. I'll make you watch out of the gate. I make a very similar case. I had a bad feeling we were going to be on the same horse there, but it happens sometimes. And I think she's a great single. I guess what I'll add is this. I think in addition to everything you said about Heavenly Love, the play here is that Wonder Godot is a little bit vulnerable to me. I just feel like she has been, I feel like last time that was a day where the rail to me didn't seem very good. And the other main competition in the race for her spent a lot of time on the rail. She sort of had this perfect trip, very much in playing with the professor. I know she crushed them, and I'm picking nits here, but I think she will be odds on. There's enough reasons to go in a different direction. Wonder Godot might just beat me again, but it won't be as painful as last time. I'll tell you that, because I really was stacked up against her.
Let me tell you who I don't like. I don't like Blonde Bomber.
Why don't you like Blonde Bomber?
And that horse is 7-2 on the morning line, so it will obviously take some money, and has that flashing third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly, so we'll take money off of that. That horse circled a super fast pace, a meltdown, and circled wide exactly where you wanted to be. Like, that's the stereotypical horse that I do not want moving forward, based on having two advantageous situations when it comes to the trip. And that horse will have to just beat me.
Our friend Andy Serling says it best. She's all dressed up, and I tend to agree. So yeah, it's lovely when you have a best bet type horse in a race where you have reasons to oppose. It's great. I'm always happy to bet a best bet type, even if they're the favorite. But when you have a race where you're not going to be the favorite, and oh, by the way, I don't like the third choice, that's where you can really start to think about getting stuck into your opinion. Let's breeze through. Give us your thoughts on the 8th race here, JK, real quick, and then let's talk Lecomte.
You said the turf race. You cut out just a second.
I said let's breeze through the 8th race and then move on to the Lecomte. I assume the 8th race was in your pick as well, if it started with the 7th.
It was. I was just making sure that's what I didn't hear you say that one exactly. This race I used every horse but 2, in this spread, because I only used 2 in the Lecomte. I just didn't have a strong opinion. It's fairgrounds turf. Those races are chaotic in my opinion for lots of different reasons. I liked the one that I was the most interested in was Avanzare, first time Broberg. Obviously Broberg claimed the horse for 16. The horse ran well going 5 with a big figure, but has back numbers and back races that suggest that the 2 turns won't be a problem. Gets our guy Beschiza that, if I'm not mistaken, Mike Maloney mentioned on their show when we had him on here for like one of those riders that's really gotten his attention.
Yes.
And I was lucky enough a few weeks ago to be in Lexington and hanging out with Mike, and we watched him ride this just masterful ride where he just tucked in the pocket on the turf. And so I think that he'll have him in the right spot. Big number morning line. Obviously, there's some classier types in here, at least considering the last race that Avanzare was in. But he's the one that I'd be interested in. Although like I said, I'm using all but 2 in the pick 3 spread.
All right, I'm curious to hear who your 2 are in the Lecomte. For me, if I were to pick 2 in here, and I won't go in pick order, I'll go in likelihood of winning order. I don't think there's a lot of reason to go against Instilled Regard. And I would definitely want Instilled Regard, the 10 on my tickets. And then my sort of flaky long shot, who I think will appreciate the distance and has the finish to make an impact here and might just enjoy the long fairground stretch, is number 8, Zing Zang, for Steve Asmussen. So for me, those will be the 2. I talk more about Zing Zang, as does Dan Illman, on Out of the Gate, coming up next for those of you listening live. If not, you guys can also download Out of the Gate as a podcast feed. Folks should be checking it out. Dan does a fantastic job sort of shepherding an all-star DRF team of handicappers. You will have to listen to a pick every week from Jonathan Kinchin, but if you can get through that, and if you're listening to this show, clearly he doesn't offend you that much, you can get plenty of great content there. JK, who are your 2 in the Lecomte?
Yeah, I liked Principe Guilherme. I had to go.
I was against, so I want to talk about this for a minute.
Yeah, I liked that one. Just forwardly placed type. Progressive type, well-bred, the type of horse that I'm just not going to leave off. But it's also not the type of horse that I'm going to single. And then also is Instilled Regard with the last figure. I think he had a 1:22 time for him in his last race at Los Alamitos. And that was with an early, with a wide trip and an early move. Now, yes, we've talked about it before. Wide is not necessarily a negative at Los Alamitos, but you are still losing ground. And the early move and the bump in the stretch was the things that kind of upgraded me there on Instilled Regard. I don't have his buyer in front of me, but like I said, the time
92
was 122, 92 on the buyer scale.
Yeah, faster on Craig, but still not a bad buyer. And obviously the form of that race working out so well with McKinsey. Instilled Regard is basically why I don't like Principe Guilherme. I can't design the race for Principe Guilherme with all the other potentially better speed sign on. I feel like he's bossed fields he was superior to, and the water gets a lot deeper here. And I think between the open length victories and the gaudy figures, this is a horse who I don't know how much finish he really has, and he's really going to have his feet to the fire here.
The long shot that I would use if I was behind in a tournament or underneath in some situations or some saver tickets would be 30-1 on the morning line, number 7, Night Strike, coming out of Remington Park. Had a little bit of trouble in the last race. Take a look at that tape. Should improve off of that effort. And then it's just been wide in like every race of his entire career going back at Retirement. I think that horse could be one that could pick up some pieces late. Calvin Burrell obviously is not going to lose ground like the horse has been losing. I'd imagine he'll find a way down to that white thing that runs along the inside of the dirt track. So Night Strike would be one is a little bit of a long shot to try to hook up underneath.
I like it. Clever. All right. Time to bring in our special guest. Want to do something special for Show 300, and very happy now to cut to an interview I was happy to perform the other day with one of my favorite people in the horse racing business, ever. Here's the great Harvey Pack on the DRF Players Podcast, show number 300. And now is a very special treat to myself and to the listeners for this 300th edition of the DRF Players Podcast, bring in legendary horse racing broadcaster and a man I am very proud to call not only a mentor, but a friend, the great Harvey Pack. Harvey, how are you today?
Well, happily, I'm able to say okay. If I wasn't, you wouldn't have me on.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. You are one of the frequently asked questions, even now around Saratoga. Everybody's saying, how's Harvey doing? When are we going to get Harvey back to Saratoga? Doesn't sound like you're too keen on the plan, but I haven't fully given up the idea just yet.
I can't make it to the nearest restaurant to my home, and you're asking me to go to Saratoga. It's just too much. I'm very happy to still be here. That's all I'm working on now.
Well, we're very happy you took the time to join us today. You made an observation to me the other day that I wanted to follow up on about all the things in racing that have changed just in the time period. Gosh, I guess it's almost been a decade now, if you can believe that, since I had the pleasure of helping you out on your fantastic book, May the Horse Be With You. What are some of the things that you feel like have changed in racing, even since that book was published?
Well, they really have changed a lot, because I went over the book the other day, and I can't read it anymore. If I could read it as many times as Dan Illman, I'd be a lot. But I did look through it, and some of my favorite stories no longer apply. For example, when I said that my friend Jack Brown, who was born on February 46, he always used to buy a 246 trifecta or triple. And in the book, somebody says, "Where is Jack?" And the answer was, he's at the window buying 3.5 pounds of 246. That's not true anymore. It's one ticket, and it can be done on less paper. You don't even need the ticket. Most people don't even have a ticket. So there's one thing right away, obsolete.
I think people can remember that day, though. Of course, very different situation. The menu of bets itself was limited, and obviously all the technology limited. But I will say I'm happy to report that you have embraced some of the new technology. I know you're a regular online bettor these days. Is that still correct?
Well, I never leave the house. It's very difficult. In the old days, people had tickets. Nobody has tickets anymore. Maybe a few, not many. We're all doing it online. And even I, a man of 91, who shouldn't even know what online is, it's the only way I bet. I have the computer. The computer is, I think, from the 18th century, but I'm able to rouse it and get on the NYRA website and wager. And it's terrific. It means you don't have to leave the house, and I don't even have to remember how I did. Remember the story about the guy who didn't keep records? The guy it's in the book.
Oh, it's one of my favorites.
It's everybody's favorite, but it's no longer applicable. He went to track every day. He bet everything he had. And I met him one day. His name was Clark. And I said, "Hey, Clark, and I knew he was in very bad shape. How you doing? He said, I don't know. I'm about even. And that particular story doesn't apply anymore because, A, his account would have run dry, or press one button on the computer and the whole account's in front of you. So even that story is obsolete.
One of the things in the book, I forget whose observation this was. It might have been Dan Ellman, who, as you mentioned, is, and I'm flattered to say this and agree with you, one of the biggest fans of the book that there is. But somebody made the observation that so many of the stories are about going to and from the racetrack as opposed to events that happen there. That's a little bit different these days.
Well, nobody goes to the racetrack. There are days when little Andy or one of them will say, we want to thank all our fans for coming. The mere fact that they still use the plural is great, because they could say, we want to thank the fan who's here. Because you don't need anybody there. They're all betting online, and that's where the handle comes from. That's why racing is healthier than ever, even though it's not as popular as it used to be.
Is there a particular one of those road stories from the book or from your time as a horse racing fan that sticks with you, a story about going to the track or coming from the track?
Well, they're all among my favorites because they were the most fun. The late Pete Axthelm and I used to go to the track quite a bit because we could get away in the afternoon because I had a non-job and he had a job that it was easy to bluff. He was sports editor of Newsweek. He could write it in his sleep. So anytime we wanted to go to the track, we called this guy who I call the slow-walking man. The reason he was slow-walking, he was not infirm. He just felt he owned the world, and he did. He was a successful broker. He went to the track whenever he wanted, and we could always call him, meet him on 72nd Street and 3rd Avenue and get in his car and go. And he occasionally had other people in it. One of the people he took was a guy named Mo. He was very old, I'm sure probably 15 years younger than I am now, but we thought he was very old. And we went to the track with him, and we got there. We all went our separate ways. At the end of the day, we met, and we went to the slow-walking man's car, and he drove us at least as far as P.J. Clark's. So we went there one day, and we're leaving, and as we're walking to the car, the slow-walking man is jauntily a little bit in front of us, and Pete says to him, "Where's Mo?" And the slow-walking man says, without skipping a beat, died after the first race. Apparently, Mo dropped dead right after the first race, which is a very sad, and for Pete and myself, it was very scary. But the main thing was, he was betting for a lot of guys. Hey, Mo, go to the window, Mo. And the guys that he was betting for had rushed to the body to search it for their tickets. That's the thing I remember about tickets.
Is that the story, Harvey, that has the addendum about is he alive?
Only in the double. But that's just the base. The joke was long before that, but it was a way to reuse it again. And it was true. Only in the double. Had he been alive in the double, they would have been there faster. We think that he had lost anyway. They just wanted their tickets.
Oh, geez. Well, yeah, tax purposes, a very different situation these days as well, with the way things have developed. And I remember, is it a line in the book or just something, a joke between you and Dan? The "Don't be a Mo." That's
Dan. When Dan goes to the track with a friend and they separate after they enter, Dan always says to him, "See you after the races. Don't be a Mo." But Dan just enjoys the book a lot, and I'm glad. And he likes to read about the old days. I think he came in on the edge of them, so he did see a lot of it.
He and I remember we were there. We were there for the tail end of that era for sure, and have watched the game develop in some ways better, in some ways worse. One area that I still feel like the idea of traveling to and from to enjoy horse racing is still relevant is when it comes to handicapping contests. I feel like the camaraderie we feel out in an event in Vegas or out at NYRA on one of their big days, we still get to recapture some of what must have made those days special back in the day of you and Pete and the slow walking man. I know you've had a role in the evolution of handicapping contests that I'm not sure if everybody listening to this will know. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the first one is I started at NYRA. Not like they have them now where you pay and you enter. At that time, we had marketing money, promotion money, and I just gave away the money. And all you had to do was enter the contest on the way in, fill it out, and those who made the top 25 or 50 were invited back for a 2-day head-to-head contest, and the winner would get $5,000 or something like that. And then, of course, the other contest, and now that I know you are the maven of contests, the other contest that I was involved in was at the Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, which was set up by a guy you know quite well, Steve Wilson, who at that time was an executive of the Mirage. And he talked Steve Wynn into allowing us to have a contest there where the entries paid and everything, and they got a nice prize. Actually, the first major handicapping contest in Vegas, the source of your job now at the Forum. They've grown very big. Steve was ahead of his time, but they made one big mistake. Contest number 2, I get there and I walk into the room where we're going to run the contest. And there's tables. There's blackjack dealers. There's a crap table. There's machines all over the place. I said, what the heck is this? And Steve said, they wanted to do this to find out how much they bet on gambling. I said, that ain't going to work. You could put horse players in a room with anything. If they're working on a contest or handicapping a race, they will do nothing but that. It's going to come up empty, and it's not true, because I can identify 5 people in this room right now who will be at the dice table tonight or at blackjack tonight playing really big money. Sure enough, that was our last contest.
I'm glad you got that story. You wrote the intro also to a book of mine called The Winning Contest Player, where some idiot didn't get your name on the cover, but many contend that the best piece of that book is you talking about your history with contests, and specifically that story which you called. Now, being honest, you've had a pretty great career and some pretty great gigs during that career, and I've heard you say more than once that hosting that Thoroughbred Challenge at the Mirage with Steve Sr. was the best gig you ever had. So I think Steve Sr. was a little, I don't want to say perturbed, but surprised when it wasn't in your memoir, and was very happy to see it make its way into print for The Winning Contest Player.
Even though it was hidden, no credit, nothing. I didn't even keep my copy of that book, which I took very well, I might add.
Your name is bigger than mine on the title page, but I will admit...
It should be.
I will admit that the bit on the cover was a screw-up. Someday there will be a second edition of that book, and your name will be in its rightful place on the cover. Harvey, I want to thank you so much. This show, my career would not be anything without the help and support you've given over the years, and this 300th edition of the DRF Players Podcast would be nothing without your gracing us with your presence. You've been called a national treasure, and I can't agree with that enough. Anytime you feel like telling stories, let's get you back on here, and we got to do lunch again soon. If this weather breaks, well, we'll see in a couple of weeks up in the upper West Side there.
I sure hope so. And I want to congratulate you on making a career out of my book. But as nobody, and I mean this sincerely, nobody I'd be happier for. You are terrific. Speak to you soon.
Cheers, Harvey. Well, there you have it. Harvey Pack, 91 years young, taking time out of his day to come on here, talk a little bit of his history, and make fun of me a bit, JK. You must have appreciated that.
Yeah, geez, finally somebody else on the show is getting a hard time.
All right, we are running out of time. I did want to make one other point about those fairgrounds races we talked about before. I believe at least a couple of them are part of the Public Handicapper contest this weekend. Public Handicapper, free contest website. They're in the midst of their winter contest right now. I believe that wraps up right around the end of the month. And they'll have a new contest starting soon, the Public Handicapper Prep. But you can join at any time, because in addition to the big contest prizes at Public Handicapper, there are also weekly and monthly prizes. Check it out. publichandicapper.com. Eager to get some of the PH team back on the show soon. Scott Carson, Chris Larmy. They do such a great job promoting contests, and that site has launched the career of many a handicapping contest player. A final thought, JK, before I take it for the close on this 300th show?
No, seriously, thanks for people for listening. Like, if people weren't listening, that we wouldn't, obviously wouldn't be motivated to do this, and we also probably wouldn't have the support from the Daily Racing Forum to allow us to keep doing it. And so thank you guys for listening. It's been a ton of fun being part of this, and hopefully we'll continue to do some more and give you guys some good stuff to listen to when you're driving, running, walking, sitting, betting, whatever it is that you guys are doing. So thanks so much for listening.
I love it. I love it. Thanks to Harvey Pack. Thanks to you, JK. As JK said, thanks to all of you for listening. We'll be back on Tuesday. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. Let's go break bad. Wait, that's not the line. Let me try this one. We'll be back Tuesday. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. Have an awesome day.
Everything is awesome.
Wait, that's not it either. How about this one? Peru, de Peru, do Peru, and thanks for listening. No, that's. I'm struggling here, JK. As you know, every episode of the DRF Players Podcast gets approved by this guy right here.
My name is Craig Gorbanoff, an Eclipse Award-winning producer here at DRF, and I approve this podcast.
Good. Craig did a good job on that. I think he did that live, too. All right, for real. Let's try it one more time. We'll be back on Tuesday. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.